Marcus Hayes, sports columnist for the Philadelphia Daily News. You can follow him on Twitter at InkStainedWretch on Twitter. Joining us on the show today. Marcus, how you doing today?
Good, Josh. How are you feeling?
I'm doing good, man. You know, it's been an interesting year in Philadelphia sports as we come to the end of 2017. You know, it's interesting because the Eagles are going to the playoffs. The Sixers are having another hot topic in the city. The Flyers are the Flyers, and the Phillies got a new manager. So it's been an interesting year in 2017.
Yeah, a lot of surprises. You know, the Sixers are probably better than most people thought. The Eagles are certainly better, and the Flyers are, I guess, hot and cold, right?
Oh, absolutely. So let's go with the Eagles first. You know, to me, Carson Wentz, he was having a great year, but it's not like this team is a bad team. You don't get to be 13-2 just because of one player. And I think that in the playoffs, you have home field advantage. This is a very good defense. I think that it's not the craziest thing to say this team could still make a Super Bowl run.
Well, yeah, the reality of the Eagles, I guess, turned out to be that they're kind of a great team with Carson Wentz, and they're a very good team without him. So, you know, you can't discount them as they enter the playoffs because there is no other great team. You know, Carson Wentz getting hurt sort of leveled the playing field, perhaps, but it certainly didn't ruin the Eagles' chances to win a game or two or even three.
You know, before the season, there was all the controversial comments about Doug Pederson, if he's qualified or not. And I'd always said this. You look at the head coaches who won a playoff game in their first year, guys like Rich Kotite and Ray Rhodes. They didn't have sustained success in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, it was Andy Reid who lost in his first year and then got better. And you saw Doug Pederson, he made a lot of adjustments from year one to year two. And I think that the patience with him is really paying off as a head coach.
Well, the big difference between, you know, Ray and Rich and Doug Pederson and Andy is they had a quarterback in place and a system in place to succeed quickly. And, you know, last year, the Eagles weren't bad to start. You know, if they had Lane Johnson, they maybe win 9 or 10 games. So, yeah, it's not exactly apples to apples, but I think your point is you need to give a coach a chance to grow a program. And I think we saw with Chip Kelly that the personnel needs to sort of adhere to what the coach wants as opposed to the system being everything. And that's Doug's genius. Doug understands what his players can't do. He puts them in positions to succeed repeatedly, and he doesn't get a whole lot fancier than that.
What is the one thing that has impressed you most about Pederson? Because for me, the thing with Pederson is the fact the players want to play for him, the fact that he can connect with the players, to me, it speaks a lot to Doug's ability to communicate.
That's the same thing that's impressed me the most. This is probably the best coached team I've been around in Philadelphia for its talent level and its success level. I mean, this is very much the sum of this team is greater than the sum is greater than the parts. So they're better than they are. The team itself is better than the individuals that make up the team, if that makes sense to you. And that means the coach is putting them in the positions to do really, really good things. He doesn't ask Carson Wentz very often, or didn't ask Carson Wentz very often, to make more than 2 reads in a play. You know, he gives Halavala help on the left side at left tackle. He doesn't ask LeGarrette Blount to catch balls out of the backfield. You know, he understands what his team can and can't do. He knows his bread and butter is going to be Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz with Carson Wentz or Nick Foles, regardless of the quarterback, and he leaves the defense alone but gives them the mandate, you know, bend but don't break. Please don't blitz and don't bite. So that, to me, is Doug's greatest strength. And what the result of that is you get guys who are very disciplined and very task-oriented, and they do what's asked of them. You know, confidence is huge in every sport, especially in football, but even with linemen and linebackers and people who you think act instinctively, they have very precise assignments. This team is so assignment-oriented, doing their job and doing it as well as they can, That's the thing that impresses me the most. He gets the most that he can out of this assemblage of talent.
And speaking of that semblance of talent, the players have said this week that it means something to them to potentially set the franchise record for wins in a season and go undefeated at home. And that says something about a group of players who, usually heading into a team that's going into a bye week, guys want to sit, guys want to rest. These players want to be out there and play.
They're lying to you. They do not want to be out there and play. They do not want to be out there in 20-degree weather where they can hurt themselves in a game that means nothing to them. These guys are professional athletes. They're paid to play and they're paid to win. This game doesn't help them do either. They get paid the same, and winning means nothing. So they're going to say that, but every single guy in there does not want to play tomorrow at 1 o'clock in 20-degree weather with the dusting of snow we just got. They'll tell you that, but how many of them stay in Philadelphia when they retire? There's no fealty to a team. There's no fealty to a community. These guys are professional athletes. They're mercenaries. They come together and they try to do as well as they can for a paycheck, and the paychecks get bigger the more they win. This week does nothing but impede them winning, impede them getting a bigger paycheck and winning more.
Speaking of guys getting paid to play, let's flip it over to the Sixers. Joel Embiid not playing tonight. He will play tomorrow in Phoenix versus the Suns. What is your impressions of how the Sixers are handling him?
Maybe he will, maybe he won't.
Yeah, maybe he will, maybe he won't. But listen, you just mentioned guys are paid to play, and Embiid's not playing.
Well, I am a very big proponent of sports science. I think young guys play too many games in the NHL and the NBA and Major League Baseball. I think the jump is too big for them to go from 40 games to 82 games or 100 games if they make the playoffs. So I have no problem with them resting anybody at any time for whatever reason, especially if they're young and they're fighting injuries and have an injury history. Again, I just don't care. To me, it's more important for them to be productive late in the year and productive in the prime of their careers. And none of these guys is near the prime of his career. But again, I kind of think it's funny that they're taking such a cautious track with Joel Embiid. And I also find it funny that people keep committing themselves to Joel Embiid, who keeps getting hurt. I mean, he's hurt all the time, and it's a different injury. So, I'm not wishing any ill on Joel Embiid. I would have drafted him. I would have taken that risk. He's a generational talent. But if this is, quote-unquote, the process, and he still can't play back-to-backs, and he still can't, he's still out of shape. He can't be in shape in December because of the injuries keeping him from getting into really good shape, then where is the process at? Did they make a mistake signing him long-term before this season? I don't think so. Again, I think $145 million in the NBA is a reasonable gamble for an MVP candidate. But at that, once you commit to him, once you say, okay, this is it, then you don't get to complain about how they handle him if they're handling him gently so he can be productive late this season and into later on in his career.
What did you make of the criticism on the national telecast the other night? Guys like Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, Reggie Miller, basically saying that, they don't like the fact that Embiid is not always at practice, that he's not playing enough games. Do you think that's an older generation not recognizing how the game has evolved, or do you think those guys have a point?
Well, they have a point if the guy's healthy, but he's not healthy and he's not in shape. Neither of them had to deal with what Joel Embiid had to deal with. When they came out, they were instantly effective, but they were also older than Joel Embiid, and they were very much more experienced basketball-wise. Charles Barkley had a spectacular, well-rounded game when the Sixers drafted him, and Shaquille O'Neal very quickly became a force in the NBA. They aren't really speaking. What they're saying is, hey, you know what? It's not right. This guy's getting paid. And he's not playing. Well, he's hurt, and he's injury prone. He's not in shape. They really, I understand why they're saying it. Oh, when we were in his situation, we played all the time. Well, they were never really in his situation. They weren't, they didn't come from Cameroon as a former volleyball and soccer player who, had never played more than 25 games in his career,
right.
Came out of college hurt, spent another year hurt, got hurt last year and is hurt again this year. I mean, what they're talking about is, okay, well, I did it, Tim Duncan did it, Hakeem Olajuwon did it, Ralph Sampson did it. Why can't he do it? Well, he can't do it because he's not you.
We're talking with Marcus Hayes, sports columnist for the Philadelphia Daily News. You can follow him on Twitter at InkStainedWretch. That's InkStainedWretch on Twitter. Marcus, Sixers as a whole, it's been a rough December. On the season, they lead the league in turnovers. They've had struggles from shooting from three. They have trouble closing out games. Is this just a team that's young and inexperienced, or is some of the culpability fall on the coach who seems to not always know what to do at the end of games?
Well, I don't know that there are a lot of examples of him not knowing what to do. I think there are several examples of the team not executing what he's asked them to do. The fact that you don't have a true point guard really on the team except TJ McConnell speaks to the point they're at and the process, quote unquote. If you don't have a point guard, you can't win the NBA late, and they don't have a point guard. They just don't. They don't have a frontline NBA point guard, and they haven't since Sam Hinkie came here. Now, if you endorse Brett Brown's experiment with Ben Simmons at point, then you have to expect to lose games late. You have to expect them to turn the ball over at a high rate. I wrote at the beginning of the season, they're going to have, between Fultz and Embiid, who's a turnover machine, and Simmons, they're going to have more turnovers than a Pennsylvania Dutch bake-off. I mean, they're just going to give the ball away. That's just what they're going to do. They also lead the league in fouls. They don't know how to play defense. They don't know how to hang on to the ball, and they don't know how to close out games. And they're easily defendable late in games. That's the other thing. They don't score late in games because teams understand what they need to take away. You keep Joel Embiid outside of 8 feet. You make him take poor shots or make him take difficult shots or turn the ball over. You don't necessarily double him. You keep Ben Simmons 18 feet away from the basket, 15 feet away from the basket, and you lock up Robert Covington and J.J. Redick. Robert Covington and J.J. Redick are the keys to this team winning early and late. If they hit shots early, they hit shots late, the team has a chance. If not, they don't. They're also veterans. And one of the things Brett Brown has pointed out the last 2 seasons, when they had this wealth of draft picks and this wealth of talent coming, whether it was Ben Simmons sitting out last year and coming this year, the taste of Joel Embiid you got last year, or, having one of the top 3 or 4 picks this past draft. He said, if you look at Minnesota, the problem with Minnesota is at late in games, they don't execute well down the stretch because they don't have anyone to teach them. My only criticism of Sam Hinkie, or my biggest criticism of Sam Hinkie, who I like and who I thought was really smart, is you have got to put somebody on the team with the ball in his hands who knows what he's doing in the last 5 minutes of the game, or you retard the growth of the players you've drafted. That included Michael Carter-Williams. Michael Carter-Williams needed a mentor. So that's never happened. And you see the growth not happening. You see guys not succeeding late in games. Brian Colangelo and my greatest criticism of Brett Brown is, at this point, making Ben Simmons a point guard from the beginning. There was no reason for that. There's just none. He's a wonderfully talented guy, but Magic Johnson wasn't the point guard his first season in L.A., Norm Nixon was.
Marcus, you mentioned about Ben Simmons playing point guard, and you mentioned Magic. There's plenty of guys who've come into the NBA who didn't have the outside touch immediately. Jason Kidd was not a good shooter coming out of college. You mentioned Magic. There's plenty of point guards who have the great ability to pass and do other things like Ben Simmons does that can't shoot. Do you think people get too hard on him about the fact that he can't hit the jump shot consistently?
It's remarkable. I agree. You've obviously done your homework. The best examples of really good players learning to shoot are Magic and Jason Kidd, who became very good shooters as they grew in their careers. But they could do more things. They could do different things than Ben Simmons does. Ben Simmons is a good passer, but he doesn't orchestrate a team the way that Magic or Jason Kidd or Chris Paul does. Those guys are innate point guards. Isaiah Thomas, they control all 9 other players with what they do on the court. I'm not saying Ben Simmons can't do that or won't be able to do that at some point, but he doesn't, and you should expect him to. But yes, if you expect a guy to be able to shoot who's never been able to shoot before 50 games or 30 games into his career, that's just silly. That's a silly expectation, and you can stomp your feet and scream and cry and whine about it. But that's who he is. That may change. He's an excellent athlete, just a really, really good athlete. My surprise, I guess, is that even while his foot was hurt, he could have been practicing his stroke. It looks like a flipper. It looks like a seal trying to shoot. You know what I'm saying? So the form issue for me is a greater concern than will he ever be able to, sort of get his feet, hips, and shoulders squared and follow through. My issue is what's happening in the last 8 inches of that shot, and is that something he just can't get past? I think so. I think he will be able to. And to answer your question, yeah, I think too much is being made of a rookie 30 games in not being able to shoot and not being willing to shoot. He's embarrassed. He doesn't want to miss. He believes that him giving it to, I don't know, Jared Bayless, and Jared Bayless taking a 25-footer fading away is a better shot than Ben Simmons taking an open 18-footer. He probably has to get past that for this team to be successful at all this year and maybe even next year.
Marcus Hayes has been joining us here on Sports Back Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at InkStainedWretch. He is afraid of nobody if you have a comment to him about anything. And we always appreciate that about you, Marcus. I hope you had a great Christmas and I hope you have a happy New Year and look forward to talking to you down the road.
Josh, thank you for having me.